Hi green lovers! Well, it's the end of April and I have so many seeds that I still need to get started for my summer garden. I just got back from 3 weeks of being away from my home and I am so backed up. Anyway, in this video I'm going to show you all the rest of the seeds that I'm going to be starting for my summer garden, and I'm also going to show you some tips and tricks to get them going really quickly, especially when you're behind like I am. Coming right up. Okay, so one thing to know about your late spring plantings is that usually those are the larger seeds. So the first one that I'm going to be planting is beans. Now I got some beans going already, but beans you typically want to succession plant, especially if you have a long growing season like I do. And I have not had much luck with my pole beans this year. They're just not looking that great. So I'm going to be planting some pole beans. Going to give it another shot. This is the rattlesnake pole bean. I'm also going to be trying some soybeans. This I'm doing for the first time this year, so don't know how that's going to turn out. I've got some adzuki beans. Now these are red mung beans, and they are typically the beans that are used in mooncakes and things like that, in sweet preparations in Eastern cooking. And we use this a lot in Indian cooking as well, both for sweet as well as savory. So I'm going to try and grow some of that myself. And dragon tongue bean is an all-time favorite of most gardeners. I've never grown it before, so I'm going to try that one. And just a regular old bush bean. Now I got myself a green stalk planter, a vertical planter, and I've done a few videos on that, and beans grow very well in those vertical planters, so I'm going to try growing this for the planter. The next category of seeds that I'm going to be planting are squashes and melons. Now in the squash category I've got winter squashes and summer squashes. Now, if you don't know the difference between them, the winter squash is not something that you plant during winter. It's just something that you plant that takes a relatively long time to grow, but then eventually it stores through the winter. And it's got that kind of hard shell, and that's why it takes so long to get to maturity. But these will last and last. So pumpkins and butternut squash, and I've got a few others like spaghetti squash, etc., fall into that category. Summer squashes are your zucchinis and your, in this particular case I've got a scallop squash here, and this is one of my favorites, Max's Gold zucchini. It's a beautiful yellowish orange color. It's got hardly any seeds, it's got plenty of meat in it, and it's just super delicious. So I'm going to be growing that again this year. I'm going to try growing this melon. Now I've heard that it's a very delicious melon. It's called the Rich Sweetness 132. It's from Baker Creek. I'm also going to try and dig out a watermelon from somewhere. I don't know why I forgot to bring the watermelon seeds here, but I'm going to grow a small variety of watermelon as well. The third seed that I'm going to be growing is cucumbers. Now this particular variety, the Armenian yard-long cucumber, is my absolute favorite. I grow it every year, and no matter how big I let it grow, it always tastes delicious, never turns bitter. And the reason is because it's technically not a cucumber. It is more in the melon family, but it tastes exactly like a cucumber, and so it is one of those go-tos for me every single year. Another seed that I grow later in the spring, and actually when the weather gets really warm, is okra. Now okra is intolerant of cool temperatures, so you have to be absolutely sure that the daytime temperatures are at least in the mid 70s. Nighttime temperatures should be well above 50, maybe even in the 60s. So okra is one of those that I actually consciously wait to plant, because I found that when I wait, I have better luck. I'm also going to be growing some corn. Now I typically don't like growing corn in my yard because it's a very thirsty plant, and in California we are perpetually in some state of drought. But I'm going to grow a few just because my son has asked me over and over again whether I'm going to be growing corn this year. And then there's also this corn, it's called glass gem corn, super pretty, and I want to grow that as well. So I'll grow maybe about a dozen plants of both these. And last, but by no means the least, peanuts. I am going to be growing peanuts this year, and you may ask why they kind of look like this, why aren't they in their nice packet? And that's because these are raw peanuts, organic raw peanuts that I actually use in my cooking. And I was surprised because last year I thought, let's give it a try. I planted them and they grew. Didn't grow so well for a variety of reasons, part of which is I didn't water them, but they are a very interesting plant to grow. So I'm going to try to grow it this year again, and let's see how much luck I have. Now, both corn as well as the peanuts, I'm going to be direct sowing. And the reason is because corn, it grows so fast that it barely gives me any time, frankly, to get from the container in which I started into the ground, and it doesn't like being transplanted very much. So I'm going to be sowing this directly. And the peanuts as well are a little bit finicky about being transplanted. And that was one of the problems from last year, is I transplanted them and I transplanted them too late and they didn't like it. So I'm going to be direct sowing these. So I eat peanuts a lot in my diet. In our Indian diet, we have it in all kinds of different preparations, and particularly the raw peanuts are always a staple in my pantry. And I always wondered, how come these peanuts never go bad? I think I've had bags of peanuts, like open bags of peanuts, for over a year, and you know how nuts typically get a little bit of an oily, rancid kind of taste? Well, not peanuts. And the reason is because the seeds are alive. I didn't realize that. I only realized that when I planted it and it grew. So that's just a little tip for you. In these times of potential food shortages, etc., keep living seeds in your pantry. All kinds of bean seeds, peanuts, etc. Buy organic and make sure that they are alive, and they will last and last literally for years on your pantry shelf. Okay, back to the seeds. Like I said, I'm going to be starting most of them indoors. And frankly, these seeds, all of the ones that I showed you, can grow pretty easily by direct seeding outdoors, especially when the weather is nice and warm. However, in my particular climate, where it gets pretty hot and very, very dry, and the seeds tend to dry out very quickly, I've got to stay on top of my game to make sure that the soil is moist until they germinate. I also have a lot of pest pressures. I've got squirrels, I've got gophers, I've got all kinds of things, mice, etc. They all know when I'm planting seeds. They are watching me, and they will either dig up my seeds and eat them, or they will wait for them to germinate, and as soon as they germinate, they take them out. So in order to get good, consistent germination and give these plants even a chance to get to a decent size where they become better at resisting pests, I'm going to be starting most of my seeds indoors. And I'm going to show you lots of tips and tricks on how to get these going even faster when you start them indoors, which is very essential when you're late to the game like I am. So let's start with the basics. Seeds need warm temperatures to germinate. Most seeds germinate between 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you're talking about warm weather seeds, you want the temperatures to be nice and warm. So heat mat is always a good idea. However, my temperatures in California have warmed up quite a bit. I don't want to cook my plants, and so I am not going to be using a heat mat. But if you're in a cooler climate, you might want to consider it. The next thing is the humidity dome. Now, the humidity dome for me is essential because I have a dry climate, like I said, and this keeps the seeds nice and moist. And this particular dome I purchased for this 10 by 20 tray, and it fits really nicely. It's got these little vent holes, so if it gets really, really warm, I can actually vent them up just a little bit. And of course you need seed starting mix. I use a peat-based seed starting mix. Now I know there are various points of view about peat-based products, so please don't judge me. It's just what I do. And I've got plenty of perlite mixed into it, some vermiculite as well. I make my own. Okay, so back to the seed tips. But before I do that, folks, I wanted to show you this beautiful plant. This is Oxalis triangularis. It's also called false shamrock. It's a type of oxalis, and I've got oxalis that grows like weeds in my backyard, but not this. Look at this delicate purple leaf. It looks really delicate, but it is such a hardy plant. I mean, this thing I've been growing for about maybe 3 or 4 years now. I neglect the heck out of this. I barely water it. It's a house plant. I just kind of let it be for the most part, and it comes back every single year. Look at those flowers. So pretty, so delicate. And then it keeps multiplying as well. So I've got, instead of one pot now, I've got 2 pots. Actually, I've got 3 or 4 pots. But I just wanted to show you this. Don't you love it? Okay, so I've got all of my seeds set up in these little cups. And one thing that I do for all of them is I wet them properly first before I plant them. Now in the case of beans, I actually soak them for a good 4 to 6 hours. Sometimes I even leave them overnight, but you don't want to go any longer than that. So this I do whether or not I am late in planting or early in planting. I always soak my bean seeds. Now make sure you provide enough water because these things will swell up. So don't give it just a sprinkle. Actually make sure that they're covered with water. And oh, by the way, I also soaked my okra seeds, which is fine. Now my seeds that kind of look like cantaloupes, these are the melon seeds. These also can be soaked. It's not really necessary, but yeah, I'm not going to soak these. I'm going to just put them directly in the soil with water. They don't swell out or anything like that. So not much benefit to soaking them. You can if you like. By the way, I'm planting roughly about a dozen or so seeds. And the hope is that I will get at least 6 of each plant to survive. I always give some grace to nature, etc., which includes pests, to take down some of these plants, and I like to make enough for all of them. And if I have extras, I always give them away to friends and neighbors who are always grateful for my extras. Now these seeds, the bigger ones, these are the winter squash seeds, so things like butternut squash, etc. What I like to do for these seeds is I like to scarify them or scar them. And the way that I do that is you can either take a nail file, whoops, too late now, but you can take a nail file and file this down, or you can take a little nail clipper and clip off just the tip. So if you take a look at the seed, this is the end from which the root will emerge. This one will open up and the leaves come out of it, and this is where the root emerges. So you want to take just like a micromillimeter, just ever so little. You want to barely weaken the outer part of the seed. That will allow the roots to push out more quickly. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to clip just a little teeny tiny bit of each of these larger seeds. Okay, let's see if I can do it really carefully. This is the side that I want to clip. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest off camera. Okay, so it has been exactly 6 days since I planted all those seeds, and a lot of them have started sprouting already. Let me flip the camera around and show you. So the okra, obviously wonderful germination. I thought since the seeds were a little old that they wouldn't germinate well. I'm going to have to thin them. Got a lot of the melons germinating. I think this is some kind of squash. I've got my adzuki beans, and then some other kind of bean that started to germinate. The soybean is germinating too. So yeah, they're all starting to pop. And just to make a point, I actually tried planting a lot of these seeds outside as well. I direct sowed them and none of them have started growing yet. So yeah, starting your seeds indoors does give you a little bit of head start. And there you have it, 16 seeds that I have started in the month of June. Let me know in the comments below what seeds you are starting in the month of June for your gardening zone. I, again, am in Zone 9B, Northern California. Until next time, folks, live green and love your greens.